theyeshiva.net.
Says the Gemarah, the Kula Alma Mia Meikara Bin Livruch. Everybody holds, whether you hold Livai or Albir, everybody holds that the bracha has to be Meikara. Meikara means before, in the beginning, before you do the mitzvah. That everybody agrees with. The question is, what should be the bracha? Rav Papi said Levayer, and Rav Papa said Albir. How do you see everybody agrees? Because we see clearly that the Gemara explained that everyone holds that it has to be lahaba. It has to be for the future. The question is, what makes it lahaba? So Rav Papi said le, and Rav Papa said al. But obviously everybody held that you're focusing on the future. The question is, how to describe that? So is it le or al? Frag the Gemara minolam. What's the source for this? Like, what's the premise? Who made this premise that a bracha has to be said before the mitzvah? The Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, says the Gemara, Kol ha-mitzvahs mavarech alein oiver la'asiyasam. All the mitzvahs, a person ought to make a bracha. Oiver la'asiyasam. Oiver la'asiyasam means before they're done. The blessing always must precede the implementation of the mitzvah. Oiver means before the asiyah, before the action, not a long time before. Right before the asiyah, you make the bracha. That's what Rabbi Yehuda taught in the name of Shmuel. Frag the Gemara, he says oiver. He doesn't say koidem. He says oiver. My mashma the high oiver lishna dagdumayu. How do you know that the word oiver represents before? It says all the mitzvahs you make a bracha oiver la'asiyasan. So we said it means before. That's what we're trying to bring out. But where do you see the word oiver that it means before? Oiver means Passover. Like what is oiver la'asiyasan? Amar Reb Nachman by Yitzchak. The Amar Kra, Reb Nachman the son of Yitzchak said the Amar Kra. The pasuk says, this is the pasuk in Shmuel Beis, Shmuel 2, chapter Yud Ches, chapter 18. And the background behind the story is David HaMelech had a son whose name was Avshalom. Avshalom staged a very vicious, heinous, and successful rebellion against his father. He tried to usurp the kingdom, and David was forced to flee the palace in Yerushalayim from the wrath of his son who wanted to kill his father. At the end, it turned out that David's side was victorious, and Avshalom was ultimately killed. He was riding on his donkey and his hair got stuck. Avshalom had very, very long hair, and his hair got stuck in the bushes, in the branches of a tree, and his horse continued running, and he remained hanging, and one of David's men came and killed Avshalom. And the rebellion and the mutiny was silenced, and David was saved.
Where was the report made with David?
So that's the story we're learning now. So the pasuk says, he quotes the pasuk, Vayoretz Achimatz derech hakikar. Man named Achimatz ran derech hakikar through the plain. Vayaver es hakushi. Vayaver is the key word. Vayager means he passed before the Cushite. As Rashi says, Oiver, Kemoi, Koidem. Oiver means before Kemoi. Vayaver es hakushi, Kadmoi b'misas Avshalom. He wanted to be the first one to tell David the good news, good quote unquote, that the one who rebelled against him, his own son Avshalom, was killed. So the Cushite was about to go to tell David, and Achimatz, Vayavar, he passes. But what's pshat? He passes? Like with the car, yeah. He wanted to get in front of him. So Vayavar, he got in front of him, in front of the Cushite, to tell David the news. Of course, the response of David was not what everybody expected. David broke down, sobbing 8 times. He spoke about his son, I wish I would have died. I would have died instead of you. Even though this son tried to kill him, but nonetheless, David's love to Avshalom came out. And to the point that his general said to him that this is really not good because you're destroying the morale, because everybody who's been fighting Avshalom now sees how sad you are. It's really not going to help the future of this government. It's interesting, Reb Chaim Shmulevich was the Rosh Hashiva of Mir, and one of his students and relatives told me that he would go very often to daven at Yad Avshalom. It's not a place where people go. So he would go there, and he would say that why Avshalom? Because Avshalom did the worst things to David. But nonetheless, it was his child. Because it was his child, the love remained very, very intact. It was unconditional, not only unconditional, despite the fact that Avshalom wanted to murder David, the affection that David had to Avshalom remained to the point that he wished that he would have died instead of Avshalom. So he said it's a very good place to daven, to tell God, no matter what, the love to a child is unconditional and absolute.
Did David order the general to kill, or did
No.
the general do it?
No, on his own. So the Gemarah says that this is how you know that oiver means before. Now it's a very strange Gemarah. Who said the word oiver? Shmuel. Shmuel is an Amoyre, Rabbi Yehud in the name of Shmuel. So the Gemarah is now explaining the words from an Amoyre based on a word in Tanakh. Usually you want to understand what a word in Tanakh means, so you bring different proofs. Here it's an interesting thing. When an Amoyre says a word, he could have said a different word. He used the word oiver, so we're saying, what did he mean by the word oiver? We'll see from the Tanakh what he used. And they find this pasuk by Yaver es Hakush. It's very interesting.
Or the verse is the same thing.
Huh?
Proofs.
Oir, yeah, trying to prove what oir means, yeah. The beginning of Pesachim, exactly. We want to know what the Tana means when it says oir, and what Shmuel meant when he used the word oiver.
That's the Gemarah of the Mishnah.
Yeah.
It's scared. It's just
In the Gemarah itself, yeah. It's an Amoyra, yeah, an
We
Amoyra.
don't pass him. Shul, we would pass him from what?
No, nobody's arguing with Shmuel.
What is this? The Gil Milsa, the Al?
Yeah. Nobody's arguing with Shmuel.
He's bringing a proof to what Shmuel said from.
Yeah, what Shmuel meant with the word oiver. Oiver means
We're
before.
allowed to do that, even though we're
Yeah.
learning a halakha from.
Yeah. Abaya says Mehacha. There's another pasuk. Sefer Bereshis, Parshas Vayishlach, V'hu avar lifneihem. What happens is Esav is coming to Yaakov with 400 troops. Yaakov sets up, he separates the two camps, and he has his wives and all of the children, and then it says, V'hu, and he avar lifneihem. What does avar lifneihem means? He passed before them and he bowed down to Esav 7 times. So the word avar again means he passed ahead of them, before them. So oiver la'asiyasin means you pass ahead of the mitzvah. It doesn't mean you pass over the mitzvah. Oiver means you make a bracha oiver. Before the mitzvah, you run ahead before the mitzvah to make a bracha. Not after the bracha or middle of the mitzvah. V'boy seima. Another way of proving this, of deducing this, is mehacha, from a third verse in the Sefer of Micha. The Navi Micah chapter, Micha Perik Beis, speaks about the time of Bias HaMashiach, when Mashiach comes. And the pasuk says, just to quote the context, Kabetz HaKabetz She'eris Yisrael, Hashem says, I'm going to gather all the remainder of the Jewish people, Vayavor Malkom Lifneim V'Hashem Beroisham. And their king, Melech HaMashiach, Malkom, their king, will pass, Vayavor, will pass before the Jewish people. Mashiach will go ahead of the Jewish people, he will lead them. V'Hashem Beroisham. Rashi says, Vayavor Malkom Lifnehem, Yakdim Leilach Beroish. Their king, Mashiach, will again lead them. He will go at the head, he will lead them, he will pass before them. From all these psukim, from the first pasuk, Vayavor es Hakushi, in Shmuel Beis, from the second pasuk in Vayishlach, V'hu avar lifneim, and from the third pasuk in Micha, Vayavor Malkom Beroisham, we can clearly see that the word oiver can also represent the meaning of doing something before. So when Shmuel said, Kol ha-mitzvahs mavarech alein oiver la'asiyas, and all the mitzvahs you make a bracha, oiver la'asiyas, and it means before you do the action. And that's why it's so important to have the right text, which denotes that you're going to do the mitzvah in the future. It was not yet done. I'm sorry, what did you say?
I heard that might happen today. It's probably going to happen today, this last Mika.
Amen. Amen. Achakaloi. B'chol yom sheyavel l'shavascha kivino kol hayom. It could be in the middle of the shir.
But it's supposed to be, it's not Erev Shabbos, it could happen.
Avada.
But this is different.
Beautiful Thursday morning. It's actually a great day to happen. You had Aleph Shevat, whatever, a better day. Huh? Before the snowstorm, yeah.
You can say that
And before the barbecue. And before breakfast.
all the mitzvahs have the lifnei, but the mitzvah for lighting is always after. Just we learn it from Shabbos. So it's also here we also orally both, so we do it after. Because on Shabbos we first do light and then we say bracha.
That's a very good question. On Shabbos, the bracha is made after you light the candles, not before you light the candles. That's a wonderful question. The answer for that is, and we're going to see now a few details connected to this issue, but generally speaking, when it comes to Shabbos, the problem is as follows. When you make the bracha, Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbos Kodesh, according to many, it's accepting Shabbos, Kabbalah Shabbos. Once she accepted Shabbos on herself, she won't be able to light the candle. So that's why she lights the candle before she makes the bracha. On the other hand, you'll see the minhag by most women is they'll light the candle, and then they'll go like this. They'll cover their eyes, make the bracha, and then they'll open their eyes. And the reason for that is for this very reason. Because even though they lit the candle, they shouldn't yet enjoy the light. And remember also, lighting Shabbos candles happened at a time, the Chazal instituted it a couple of years before Thomas Edison. So when you came into your house on Friday night, if there were no candles, you didn't come into a house that's lit up with fluorescent lights or lamps or other lights. It was pitch dark, which is why the Chazal instituted the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, because since it was the only day of the week where there was a mitzvah to have a meal at night on Shabbos, make kiddush and have a meal, and people would literally sit in the dark. We don't appreciate what Shabbos candles really is, because we live in a time when we have other sources of light at night.
Why is it not called the mitzvahs on the house?
The mitzvah of Shabbos, of Neir Shabbos, it was for Hana, it was for Shalom Bayis, it should be peace in the home. It was for Einik Shabbos, for the pleasure of Shabbos, and for peace in the home. I was once in the Catskills for Shabbos in the country, and there was a blackout right before Shabbos. And it was the Catskill Mountains, one of these colonies that when it gets dark, it's dark. It's not like in the street where you have some generators, some lanterns, some trucks with headlights, whatever. There's always some light, but this was up there in the mountains. So we sat down for the Shabbos meal. It was not stam dark, it was pitch dark, but my wife has lit candles. So on the table there were candles. I said, at last we can have a taste of what the mitzvah of Neir Shabbos Kodesh actually was designated for. Now you see the difference. We're eating, it was still pretty dark, but the candles gave it actually a very beautiful and warm feeling. You could see each other, you could see the food, you could see the house. So that was the reason they made it. So therefore she closes her eyes so she won't have hana from the light, and then she makes the bracha, and then she opens her eyes, she takes off her hands from her eyes, she removes her hands from her eyes, so that way she could now enjoy the light as though she just lit it. So in that way the bracha, even though it wasn't done before the kindling, but the bracha is done before the benefiting and enjoying the light. So over there you have an exception, because it's a problem to light the candles after the bracha. If you say that during the bracha, you accept Shabbos. There are ways around it, but they're complicated. If she has mamash kavana that she doesn't want to be makabel Shabbos, it could work. But generally, you don't want to do that, so we do the bracha after.
Yom Kippur, people want to go to Shul, trail.
You do it, yeah.
You take on it, there's no hanabi. While she's lighting it?
Well, she lights it and she right away does it. She's not yet focused on that. Yeah. So that's why the women, it's one of the reasons why they cover their eyes.
I got a different explanation.
Yeah.
Because normally we just go like this, but the women go like this.
That's a good question. Why?
So I asked once.
Yeah.
Moses.
Moshe Rabbeinu, you asked.
Website. So,
askmoses.com, yeah?
So,
So what did he answer?
That is symbolically that the mother gathers in all the neshamas and she makes bracha.
Very nice. You say they go like this to gather in the whole family and the whole week and the whole energy and the whole Knesset Yisrael.
She's doing some kind of a purposeful work that she could do that.
I hear. Okay, I never heard that. So the Gemarah, so therefore bracha is done before the mitzvah. Bei Rav Omri in the Beis Medrash of Rav they taught that all the mitzvahs you make a bracha before, chutz min hatvila v'shofar, except two mitzvahs: submerging in the mikveh and blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And the yeshiva of Rav said, in these two mitzvahs you make the bracha after the act.
Rav and Shmuel, Rav would be for Nisr, so we pass him generally like.
Yeah, halacha, yeah. This is the yeshiva of Rav. Frek the Gemarah, 1 second. Bishlei metvila. I understand why in the yeshiva of Rav they would say, when it comes to the mikveh, you make the bracha after. Why? Da'akati gavre loy chazi. Because there are some types of tumais, some types of impurities, where the person is not worthy. The person is not in a state where he could make a bracha before mikveh. So therefore, there was no chance, there was no ability to do it, so you do it after tefillah. That I understand. We're going to explain what this means in a moment. Ela shofar my time. But why can't you make a bracha before you blow shofar? I understand why you can't make a bracha before mikveh. Why before shofar? Now, what do we mean by mikveh? So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, very interesting, Akati gavra loy chazi. Kegoin tvilas balei keri. We're talking here in a case where a bal keri has to go to the mikveh. Now this is a very interesting idea in Jewish history and halacha. A person who emitted semen, which is called shichva zera, the sperm, the seed of life, that person, for whatever reason, whether the person did it consciously in terms of a marriage, or if a person, what's called mikre laila in Chumash, meaning it just happened in the middle of the night, the person wakes up in the morning and he realizes that he emitted during the night the seed of life, this person is called in halacha a bal keri. That's his name. The halacha is he becomes tameh. There's an impurity as a result of that. Min ha-Torah, you're not allowed to eat karbonis, you're not allowed to eat truma if you're a kohen, you're not allowed to come into the Beis HaMikdash. But it's not a big tumah, meaning you go to the mikveh, you wake up, you go to the mikveh, and you become tahir after nightfall. After nightfall that day, the day is over, and you went to the mikveh, you become tahir, you can go to the Beis HaMikdash, you can eat truma, you can eat karbonis, alts is good. Okay. A person who's tameh is allowed to daven. A person who's tameh is allowed to learn. A person who's tameh is allowed to say Kriya Shema. A person who's tameh is allowed to say, it's not a problem. Minat Torah, tumah doesn't stop learning or davening. However, Ezra HaSofer, Ezra the scribe, who was one of the Jews who rebuilt Klal Yisrael in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash era when they came back to Eretz Yisrael from the Babylonian exile, Ezra made a very interesting takana. And he said that there's one tumah. If a person touches a corpse and they're tummy for 7 days, he didn't make this takana. Or any other tumah. The tumah of keri, he excluded that this person, when he's a keri, should not daven, should not make any brachas, should not learn until he goes to the mikveh. The moment he goes to the mikveh, now he could do everything. And he doesn't have to wait till nightfall, like when it comes to coming to the Beis HaMikdash. But Mela, the Gemara says, a Bal Keri, he woke up in the morning, 6 o'clock, he runs to the mikveh. He can't make a bracha before he goes in. Because Ezra made a takana that a Bal Keri can't say a bracha. Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam al tefillah. So therefore, he has to wait till he goes into the mikveh, and after the mikveh, he can make a bracha. That's prat. The akati gavra loy chazi. Oh, usually you can make a bracha, but he's not allowed to make a bracha. That's the reason he's going to the mikveh. So b'meila, he has to wait till after it. Now you'll say, but it's after the mitzvah, you can't make the bracha, because there are many shittas that once the mitzvah passes, you're not allowed to make the bracha. The Rambam holds once you did the mitzvah, you can't make the bracha anymore. But here is different. Why? Because over there, he could have made the bracha and he didn't make the bracha. Here, he can't. So the rabbis, lechatchila, made the takana that the bracha should be after, because you can't do it before. So therefore, in this case, you could do it after the tefillah. Now, since the majority of mikvahs were because of keri, because this is so common, right? Every time a person was with his wife, he went to in the morning to the mikveh. He had to go to the mikveh. He couldn't come to shul. He couldn't come to yeshiva. For Mr. Given, right? Everybody went to the mikveh. So therefore, Ezra HaSofer was masakin this. Ezra HaSofer was masakin this. Everybody went to the mikveh.
Said last time the story of the Melech.
Yeah. Shul said, Mikra Laila by David. Since most tefillos were carry, that was the majority of reasons. That was majority of people who went to the mikveh. We're not talking about women's mikveh for nida, but majority of men who went to the mikveh was for what? For carry. So therefore, the Chacham already didn't distinguish, and they said that for all the tefillos, you should make the bracha not before, but after. That's what Rashi is saying. You see, the Chaim alon bebrachas dav chav she'asa b'divrei Torah or bebracha. The Ezra tikein tefillah lebali carry and l'divrei Torah. So Meli can't say a bracha. Or mishamahu tefillah tikun b'chala tefillahs b'rechas and l'b'sayif. So even another situation, for example, a woman who could make a bracha before mikveh. A nida's allowed to make a bracha. A woman, when she goes, they already said she should also make the bracha. All tefillahs. Or another reason you're going to the mikveh, because already they're not going to distinguish this mikveh yet, this mikveh not. That's the reason. Just to give clarification, even though it's not negated to this sugya, most poskim, not all, but most poskim hold that Tfilas Ezra was obliterated. In the times of the Amirayim, which means hundreds of years later, it's a very interesting thing. It's one of the decrees of Chazal. Ezra was not just Chazal, from Ajin, that they obliterated. And the reason was, it was not sustainable. It was simply not sustainable. Here you have a mikveh, Sheina Heisa mikveh, in the gates of Satma you have many mikvehs. It was not sustainable. You know what a mikveh looked like then, right? Either you found a pond, or you found a cistern. We're not going to talk about the weather, what the temperature of the water, and the cleanliness of water. It wasn't so easy. Mikveh wasn't such a pashta thing. It wasn't a pashta thing. So they obliterated this takana, and that's why today a Balkari could learn and can daven and can say brachas without mikveh. There are those few poskim who hold that it's not so pasha that Tfilas Ezra was batal, which is one of the reasons that many Jews continued and continue to be makbid on what we call Tfilas Ezra, which means in these situations to try and go to the mikveh in the morning. But the interesting thing is that once they made the bracha after mikveh, they never changed that. Even though they were mavatal takanas Ezra, they didn't change the bracha. The bracha remained even after. That's an interesting thing, right? Because just like Rashi says, they didn't distinguish between this tefillah and another tefillah. You can add, and even after this tefillah was gone, once they already did it by all the mikvahs, they kept it. They kept it in place.
Don't you have Ezra's based in making that takana and then a later?
Yeah, of course. I don't mean Ezra himself. No one person. Yeah, it's Bezdin.
So I'm asking, don't you have a later based in which is in Fatma being the Barco and isn't that why maybe?
Excellent question. How do they have the rights to do it? The Rambam says that if Bezdin makes a takana, and then it's realized at some point that it never so then it doesn't work. It doesn't have the halachic authority of a takana.
Requires them to say.
Yes. It was simply not sustainable.
Even those that kept it with bracha and shul. Bracha, even those that said you should keep a little bit that learning, so you don't know you have to.
No, you don't make a bracha. You don't make a bracha. Because if there's no chi of mikveh, you don't have to make a bracha, yeah. Well, let me give you a little background. I think it will become clearer, and then you'll understand the argument also, okay? The Gemarah tells us in Maseches Baba Kama that Ezra instituted 10 takanas. One of them was that a Balkari has to go to the mikveh. Meaning, min ha-Torah, a Balkari can't eat truma. He can't eat karbonas. But Ezra came and said that he can't even learn Torah. Until he doesn't go to the mikveh, he can't learn Torah. The Rambam teaches us in Hilchas Tefillah that the Bezdin after Ezra added that he can't daven. A Balkari can't daven, which means saying all the brachas, saying Shema, saying Shemona Esra, all these brachas with Hashem's name he can't say until he goes to the mikveh. So this is the Takanas Ezra, that when the Balkari wakes up in the morning, he wants to go daven, he wants to go learn, he first has to go to the mikveh. Now, step 2. There's a Gemara in Maseches Brachas, Dav Chav Beis. It's going to be quoted in Tosfos that Rabbi, there was a story. There was a student who was in Beis Medrash, and he wasn't sharing words of Torah because he was a Balkari. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira told him, "Open your mouth. Divrei Torah are not mekabel tuma. Even though you're a Balkari, you could still teach Torah. And the Gemara says over there that batlu l'tvilusa, that they nullified the halacha of Tvilas Ezra. And the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, as Tosfos is going to quote a Gemara, that the world follows Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, that when it comes to Torah, a Balkari is allowed to speak Torah, even though he did not go to the mikveh. Now you ask the question, how could this happen? If Ezra made a takana, or the Bezdin after Ezra made a takana, another Bezdin can't just nullify a takana, unless they're greater in numbers and in wisdom. How can that happen? How can Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira be mavata takana Ezra? So the biggest answer, the main answer that's given in most poskim is that the takana never took root among the Jewish people. It spread, but it did not spread among all the Jewish people. In other words, it was never accepted. And the reason is because it was almost impossible. It was almost impossible. And some say that even if it was accepted, but ultimately they saw that it's not sustainable. People can't do it. So they could nullify it. Because it doesn't have that halachic authority. There are even Rishonim who say that when Ezra made the takana, he made a stipulation that it could be obliterated. It's like he inserted a clause that this takana could be obliterated. So therefore they could nullify it. But now there's a very interesting machlokes if the bittul of the takana was for everything or only for Torah. In other words, when they obliterated the takana of Ezra to go to the mikvah as a balkari, is it only for Torah or also for tefillah? There's a machlokes. The Rif in Maseches Brachos brings two opinions. He says one opinion is that they completely obliterated the institution of Ezra. For learning, for davening, you don't have to go to the mikveh. But then he brings a second opinion. Second opinion is it was obliterated for Torah. If you want to learn Torah, you have to go to the mikveh. When it comes to davening, you still have to go to the mikveh. Or at least, even if not going to the mikveh, you have to wash yourself in a certain measurement of water, 9 kabin of water. And the Rif quotes Rabbi Haigon, who says since there's no clear halacha, the minhag by all Jews is that somebody who emitted seed, a balkari, even if he doesn't have water, even if he doesn't have mikveh, he should not daven until he bathes. So this is a big machlokes. It's already brought in the Rishonim. Yeah, the Rambam, Rashi, the Rosh, the Rashba hold like the first opinion, but Rabbeinu Chananel, the Ravid, the Rekeach, the Eshkol, other Rishonim hold like the second opinion, that it was only taken away for learning, not for davening. Now, the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in our Chaim, is that they will mevatel tfilas Ezra, both for Torah and for davening, which means even a balkari is allowed to learn Torah in the morning, he's allowed to say Shema, he's allowed to daven, even if he didn't go to the mikveh, even if he didn't bathe. But because there are Rishonim who hold that it was not nullified for tefillah. Therefore, throughout the generations, many were very meticulous about tefillas Ezra. Meaning, in the morning, before they went to daven, as a preparation for davening, they went to the mikveh. Even though halachically you don't have to, but since many Rishonim hold you have to, so therefore this was a very accepted custom until today by many Jews who will go to the mikveh. Some go to the mikveh every day, but some go to the mikveh when under these circumstances. Yeah, the Rambam himself says in Hilchos Tefillah, the Rambam himself writes in Hilchos Tefillah that the minhag in Iraq and in Spain, the minhag in Shinar and in Spain is that a balkari, somebody who emitted semen, does not daven until he bathes his entire body in water. The Rambam says that's a preparation for davening. That's a fact, yeah. In fact, there's an incredible tshuva of the Rambam, fascinating tshuva of the Rambam, a letter from the Rambam, that they asked the Rambam why he was so lenient about a balkari going to the mikveh, and the Rambam says that he never ever nullified the concept of going to the mikveh by balkari. He just could not write in his sefer only that which is obligatory in halacha. And since it's not obligatory in halacha, therefore he can't write in his sefer you have to go to the mikveh. But he says he was not mavatal it afilu shah achas. In other words, the concept is still a very powerful concept. It's just not halachically obligated. It's a famous Talmidei Rabbeinu Yoina who says in Brachos that according to everybody, the tefillah is much more accepted. The tefillah, davening, is much more accepted when it comes following mikveh. Yeah, there's a famous Rosh, The Rosh says don't daven without clean hands and without purity, because the tefillah won't be heard as well, etc. The Meiri says, a lot of the Rishonim say that the tefillah before davening is a special kedusha, and kol hamachmir b'tov yolav bracha, the Meiri says. In any case, there are many sources that the tefillas Ezra was not bottled for tefillah, only for Torah. And that's one of the big sources why there's a hakpada to go to the mikveh more often. But halachically, it's not obligatory. What did the Gemarah say? That everybody holds that a bracha has to be made before the mitzvah. That everybody agrees with. The question is what the text of the bracha should be. But the fact that it has to be before the mitzvah, everybody agrees. What's the source for this? So Rabbi Yehuda told us in the name of Shmuel that all the mitzvahs, one has to make a bracha over la'asiyasa. What does over mean? Over la'asiyasa, thank you. So the Gemarah brings 3 psukim in Tanakh, which all have this word over. One is in Shmuel Beis, Perik Yud Ches, a man Achimatz runs, Vayaveres HaKushi, he passes before the Kushite to tell David HaMelech about the fact that his child, his son Avshalom, was slain, and thus the rebellion was over. Vayaver, so he ran and he passed before the Kushite. So when you say all the brachas should be done over la'asiyasan, it means it should pass ahead of the action. It should happen before the action. Abaye brought a pasuk from Yaakov Avinu, V'hu avar lifneim, he passed before them, before the rest of his family, his wives and children, to meet and greet and bow down to Esav. And then there was the third pasuk from Micha about Mashiach, Vayaver malkom lifneihem, V'Hashem b'roshim. Their king, Melech HaMashiach, shall pass before them, shall go ahead of the Jewish people to lead them towards the Geula. So this is the source for the concept that a bracha must be done before the Maisa, over la'asiyasan, which means it must pass before the Asiyah. Pass ahead of it. Now you might say, why couldn't Shmuel just say koidim? Just say kol ha-mitzvahs varech koidim. Because koidim just means before. Before could mean an hour before. Before could mean a half an hour before. Could be before 2 minutes before. But you're not supposed to do that. A bracha has to be made immediately before the mitzvah, meaning in the closest proximity to the mitzvah. There should not be a hefsek between the bracha and the mitzvah. That's why even lulav. Why don't we just say, leave the lulav on the table and make a bracha? Litar lulav, and then pick up the lulav. We don't say that. We say, you pick up the lulav and then you make a bracha, which makes a problem. Because once you pick up the lulav, you already did the mitzvah, so you have to say, al netilas lulav. And the answer is because the mitzvah has to be done right before the activity. There shouldn't be anything separating between the action and the bracha. Even the fact that you have to pick up the lulav, which is already some type of hefsek, and it should be recognizable by the bracha that you are already involved and prepared to begin the mitzvah. And hence, he uses the word oiver, which means it has to pass before the mitzvah. It's like literally you're both running and you go right ahead of the mitzvah. So the oiver is obviously in close proximity because he passed you. Somebody who passed you has to be very close to you. If not, he couldn't pass you. If somebody passes you on the highway, obviously he's very close. If he's a mile ahead of you, 3 miles ahead of you, 100 miles ahead of you, he didn't pass you. He's chatchila ahead of you. So oiver means I passed you, but I'm very close to you. I passed you. I'm right ahead of you. That's what it means. I passed you. As in these psukim. Vu avar lifneim, Yaakov wasn't a mile ahead of his family. He was with them. He just went right in front of them. Or Achimatz wasn't miles ahead of the Kushi. He had to pass him. He just went right in front of him. And Mashiach, it says, Vayaver malkom lifneim. So in all these situations, it represents, I think, that why he uses the word over, because the mitzvah must be done right after the bracha. The bracha is here right before the mitzvah. Then the Gemarah said that in the yeshiva of Rav, they said that there are 2 exceptions, mikveh and shofar. So the Gemarah says, we understand mikveh, that you make the bracha after because the person can't make the bracha before tefillah. Rashi explained that this was referring to a balkari, somebody who emitted semen, and Ezra made a takana that a balkari should not learn, and should not daven, and should not say Kriya Shema, and should not make brachas until he goes to the mikveh in the morning, and then immediately he could do all of this. So when this person goes to the mikveh, which was the most common mikveh, because it's the most common source of tumah, because it's just part of life, anytime there were relations between a husband and a wife, or whatever the situation was that a person, willingly or unwillingly, at any point of the day or night, emitted seed, they went to the mikveh. This is called a balkari. So this was the most common source of mikveh, and you can't make a bracha before. Why can't you make a bracha before? Because you're not supposed to make a bracha, but that's the whole point. That's why you're going to the mikveh. So here, I understand why you make the bracha after. That's how Rashi explained the Gemara. And since they did it for that tefillah, they already did it for all tefillahs, that you make the bracha after the mikveh.
Ezra made a gezerah also that you make a bracha afterwards, or when does a man ever make a bracha on one of the mikveh?
Well, on this they did a bracha, because it was a chiyuv, yeah. As I mentioned, the tefillah of Ezra was obliterated. It was later, at the time of the Amirayim, they obliterated the takana.
A man never makes a bracha.
Right. But a woman does, and a convert does. Because we don't have today a mitzvah of mikveh. We don't have a mitzvah chiyuv of mikveh. So in the time of the Amirayim, most halachic authorities believe that the takana of Ezra was obliterated, the time of the Gemarah already, and therefore the bracha doesn't exist. But what happened was they still retained, since they made the bracha to be after the tefillah because of the takana of Ezra, so therefore the bracha never changed. And after tefillah, you still, all the brachas, whenever you make a bracha for mikveh, it's done after mikveh. So the Gemara says, okay, Bishleim tefillah, I understand tefillah, da'akati gavra loy chazi, because the person is not suitable to make a bracha before. Ela shofar my time, but why shofar? What's the problem with shofar? Why do you have to make a bracha after the blowing of the shofar? V'chi tema, you might say, Dilma mekalkel tkiyah. Maybe the tkiyah will not be done efficiently. It will be ruined. In other words, perhaps the person won't be able to emit the tkiyah, and therefore he won't do the mitzvah. And if the mitzvah is not done, the bracha might be a bracha in vain. So perhaps that's the reason that in the yeshiva of Rav they said, wait till after shofar, and then you'll make a bracha. Says the Gemara, really? Hachi, if that's the case, afilu shchito milah? Then even by slaughtering an animal or by circumcising a child, there should also not be a bracha before you do it. Here too, you could say the person won't do the right shchita, a shaykhid could make a mistake. And if he doesn't do the right shchita, so then it's a bracha levatala, the same is true milah. In other words, tkiyas shofar requires skill. Slaughtering an animal requires more skill. Circumcising a child requires perfect skill. So if you're going to tell me that by tkiyas shofar I'm concerned that the person may err, and even though they may have been prepared or they may have not been prepared, the tkiyah won't come out well, and therefore it wasn't a mitzvah, and therefore it turns out that it was a bracha levatala, so wait till you did it once you do the job, and we know it's a job well done, then you make the bracha. We should say then, shchita, you shouldn't make a bracha till after the shchita, because in case it's not a good shchita, so then you didn't do the mitzvah of shchita. The mitzvah of shchita is to shecht, not to kill. Killing an animal is not a mitzvah. On the contrary, shchita is the mitzvah. So till you do the shchita, don't make a bracha. Mila, the same thing. If he didn't do the right, if he didn't know what he was doing, and he didn't, sometimes it happens, I've seen it happen. A moil doesn't know what he's doing, or whatever, for whatever reason, or his hands are, whatever it is. Somebody else has to finish the job. He didn't do the job, so you should make the bracha after. So why did the yeshiva of Rav only exclude tefillah, mikveh, and shofar? Should have put into that list shchita and milah. If this logic was true, but Rav did not do that. He only excluded tefillah, mikveh, and tkiyas shofar. What do we see? That by other mitzvahs, Rav would agree that you make the bracha before you do the mitzvah. In other words, we're not afraid that it may not be performed well and the bracha will be levatala, and we understand why. We trust. If you're getting up to circumcise a child, at least let's pray and hope that you have some practice. If you're getting up to shecht an animal, let's hope that you have some skill.
Well, then that's what you can answer. You don't eat a kazayas and pots.
But that doesn't require skill. Listen, you could decide not to do it. We're not talking about somebody who decides not to do it. Somebody who wants to do it, but they should lack the skill, or they made a mistake. Other mitzvahs, you don't have that problem. Putting on tefillin, I'm going to put on tefillin. I mean, what?
No, you don't eat a kazayas and matzah or something.
Why wouldn't you eat?
You don't eat a full kazayas.
Why not? It doesn't take skill. You just have to do it.
Question?
Yeah.
Forgive me, this isn't a lazy question, but I've wondered, how is it that a shayfet, and certainly in royal, develops the practice? How do they practice when they perform? In other words,
Very easy.
As a practice, how do they get practice without doing it?
They shecht, and if it's not good, it goes to God. They go to God.
No, but so,
Well, they learn under a mentor. You have to learn under a mentor. You watch, and he observes you. Yeah.
so in other words, there's a period in which they don't do, and they want.
Yeah, just like surgeons in hospitals.
So in other words, there's a period of internship.
Yeah, of course.
That happens.
Must.
But at a certain point, they have to jump themselves.
Of course.
And that's why I didn't understand when you said that someone botched the Mila. I mean, to me, it seems like a kiddush that someone.
Yeah, I have seen it.
Somebody gets old.
Sometimes they get older, sometimes something,
So in other words, they had practice.
Yeah,
They got their hands got weak.
yeah. Or something happened, or they got confused.
Was that the incident that you saw? Was that a young
A young fellow, yeah.
So he hadn't had his internship properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's stories about people that perform.
And also mistakes. Sometimes a person makes a mistake. Huh?
Like a surgery. This is why they have malpractice insurance. Even some
Malpractice insurance. Yeah. There was a mice in Pittsburgh a few years ago. A seasoned moil and a fine man, a tzaddik, a wonderful person, and by mistake he severed the whole piece, and he himself took the baby and rushed the baby to the hospital and saved it. He knew what to do immediately. He didn't lose himself. But I'm saying he was a seasoned practiced man.
But you'd have the other way around. Is if you have this picture of a mother that was Gemarah her child in the war, and they killed her in Warsaw during the war.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the bottom line is that there is a period of internship.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and for the Gemara, this is two of a big question. There has to be a mistake. Interesting. He says it doesn't make sense. In the yeshiva of Rav, they did not exclude shofar. They only excluded the mitzvah of tevilah. But kiyah shofar, obviously, you would make a bracha before you blow shofar. We have chutz min tevilah v'shofar. Reb Chisda is convinced that this was an error that crept into the tradition, because it has absolutely no logic. Suddenly, from all the mitzvahs in the world, shofar was discriminated against, that it doesn't get a bracha before. Reb Chisda cannot maintain this. He feels that it's completely senseless. And indeed, Tanya Nami Hachi, we see that Reb Chisda may have been right, because we have a Bryce, and the Bryce says, Taval va'Allah bal. We see that the yeshiva of Rav was correct, the way Reb Chisda interpreted. Taval va'Allah bal yasser. When somebody went to the mikveh and he came up from the mikveh, when he comes up, Omer, he makes the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al hatvila. Again, we're talking about when there's an obligation, there's a mitzvah, either biblically or rabbinically, to actually immerse in the mikveh, which does not exist today for men.
Someone gets up to that blow and can't. Drop the batala.
No, well, he could give the shofar to somebody else.
That person doesn't make it.
No. Because the bracha that we make before shofar includes the whole crowd, and everybody hears it and says Amen.
Even though it was like a bracha of batala, because he couldn't do it. So it goes on anybody else.
You can give, because when the person blows shofar, the bracha they make encompasses everybody that's listening to the shofar. Because everyone is mechuyev in shofar. So why don't we all make a bracha? The answer is we listen to the Baal Tekeah's bracha, we say Amen, and whoever blows is fine. Yeah, that's why the bracha is Baruch atah Hashem lishmoya kol shofar. It doesn't say litkaya. I'm blowing, but I say lishmoya, to hear, Because the mitzvah is not to blow. You don't have to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. You have to hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. As long as you're hearing, you could blow too. When you blow, you hear. But you don't have to blow. The mitzvah is to hear. So that mitzvah is for everybody in the shul who's hearing shofar. And they are included in my brach if I'm blowing. So somebody else could blow also.
Tefillah is because you're tumah?
So tefillah, the way Rashi says it, is because the person was tameh. The Balkari couldn't make the bracha. So he had to wait till after the mikveh. So there was no choice. No, other mitzvahs, you could do everything while you're tummy. You could do most mitzvahs while you're tummy. It's not a problem. The Ezra made a takana on one tumah, the tumah of keri, of emitting seed, which was later nullified, was later bottled, that a person shouldn't make a bracha till he goes to the mikveh. So for that tefillah, he has to wait till after the mikveh.
Ezra made a takana, you could have done other mitzvahs?
Yeah, even after Ezra, you did all the mitzvahs when you're tummy, yeah. It was just davening and kriya shema and brachas. Let's take a look in Tosfos al Atvila.
This is another price that apparently is making love.
No, either Reb Chizda had a different tradition, or Reb Chizda felt that it was not defensible. It was not he felt there was absolutely no logic to it. It could not make sense. That shofar would be excluded. There would be no rationale for it. Why would shofar be excluded? Take a look in the Tosfos al Hatvila. Al Hatvila, the second to the last Tosfos in Avzayin Amid Beis. He learns it differently. Very interesting. Omer Rabbeinu Chananel b'shem Hagoyin. Rabbeinu Chananel said in the name of a Goyin, the Dafke b'tfilas geir. When Rav said that by Tvila you make a bracha after, it's talking about a convert. Atazai. Why? The loichazi koidim Tvila. Because before he goes to the mikveh, he can't make a bracha. Why not? The loimatzi lemeima vitzivonu. He can't say, and he commanded us, ta'kati nachrihu, because he's still a Gentile and he doesn't have a mitzvah yet. You're not obligated to become a convert. There's no such a mitzvah. You chose to become a convert. The premise of conversion is voluntary, not an obligatory. There's no reason for a Gentile to feel that he has to become a convert. A non-Jew could live a perfectly moral, good life as a non-Jew, right? That's one of the uniqueness, the unique elements of the Jewish religion. It doesn't say there's no salvation outside of Judaism, as the expression, there's no salvation outside of the church. For example, from the Christian perspective, if you don't accept Christianity, you're doomed to purgatory. The same is true with most other religions. In other words, it's my way or the highway. The uniqueness in Judaism is, as the Rambam famously puts it, Chasidei umas ha'olam, yesh lahem chelek lo'olam haba. The pious people among the Gentiles have a portion in the world to come. So there's no obligation to convert to Judaism. Not only is there no obligation, we are actually obligated to dissuade somebody who wants to convert.
Isn't the Baal that has to make the bracha? There, it's not voluntary.
Maybe because he was bought. Huh?
Yeah. There's a mitzvah, it's how to, he has to...
Interesting.
What does he mean? Rabbi Hananel said he was with Rabbi.
So Rabbi Hananel said that a non-Jew, when he converts, after he goes to the mikveh, he becomes Jewish, he has to go through a bris. But then he has to go to the mikveh. The time of the Beis HaMikdash, he would also bring a carbon. So after the mikveh, he becomes Jewish. So that's when he makes the bracha, because if he make the bracha before the mikveh, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu malchelu asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivonu, he never gave me such a commandment.
No, I'm asking differently. I'm asking Rabbi Hananel, who was he? And then he's referring to a Goyen. Who is the Goyen he's referring to?
Reb Sadigon. Yeah.
So he's a later authority. Rabbi Hananel is later than the Goyen?
Yeah.
So when did he live?
Rabbeinu Hananel lived in the 10th century. In North Africa, yeah. We have it on the right. You see Rabbeinu Hananel on the right? Yeah, he has his pirush.
No, I'm just wondering when.
Yeah.
But the Gaonim later, you think maybe it's Reb Sadia.
Yeah.
Why would you think it was him?
Usually Hagon is Reb Sadigon.
So live in the Reb Hananel carry made the
So later that's what the Gemara is talking about. He can't say Vitzivonu because he was a Gentile. Aval, Sharchayav Vitfila Goy Balkari Vekayetze by Mutalavarach. Unlike Rashi, Another time you're mechuyev in mikvah, like a balkari, you could make a bracha. Kedamrinu beperik mishamesu, as the Gemarah says in Maseches Brachas, nog alma kitlosa savi. The world behaves like the three sages, which and about three different halachas, and one of them is the halacha of Rabbi Yehuda ben Pseira, who said balkari, that mi sheyachal ispal levarach v'lilmud kaidem tefillah. Rabbi Yehuda ben Pseira holds that even a balkari can daven and make a bracha and learn before mikvah. So therefore, according to Tosfos, this is not the pshat in the Gemarah. The pshat in the Gemarah is that we're talking about a ger. Mila you make before, shchita you make before. Huh? No, but the moil makes the bracha. The one who gives the moil makes the bracha, not the ger. But here you want the ger to make the bracha, so you can only make the bracha afterwards. Afal pikein. So this is the shitta of Tosfos. So Rashi held the Gemarah was talking about a balkari, and a balkari can't make a bracha before because of takanas Ezra. But Tosfos says no, because as the Gemarah says that the world behaves like Rabbi Yehuda ben Pseira, who said you're allowed to do this bracha before davening, before mikveh. So therefore, what is the Gemarah talking about? Only a ger. A ger has to make the bracha after, and we understand why. There's no way he can make the bracha before. He doesn't have a mitzvah to go to the mikveh. After the mikveh, now he's a Jew, so he could say now, Hashem did give me a commandment. Hashem did give a commandment. If you want to convert, you got to go to the mikveh. By going to the mikveh, you fulfill the commandment of Hashem. But that bracha he can only make afterwards, not before.
That would always be his first bracha.
That would be his first bracha as a Jew, al hatfilah, afterwards. Yeah. There's an interesting question. Why we don't make a bracha. For every mitzvah we make a bracha. Well, not for every mitzvah. For many mitzvahs we don't. But there's a question, why some mitzvahs you don't make a bracha? One of the mitzvahs that the question exists is Pesach, Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. There's a mitzvah to tell the story. Why don't we make a bracha? You make a bracha on matzah, you make a bracha on maror, you make a bracha on the wine, you make a bracha on the... Why don't we make a bracha on the mitzvah? Yeah. Baruch Hashem Shechanu Hoseh V'Tzivanu L'Saper B'Yitzias Mitzrayim L'Hagit Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why not? That's a question. It's a question. Some answer because it's like you don't make a bracha for a bracha. You don't make a bracha that thank you Hashem for giving me a mitzvah to make a bracha. Since Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim in a way is like a bracha, it's a form of gratitude and thanksgiving. So therefore you don't make a bracha for a mitzvah that is a bracha. That's one explanation. There are different explanations, but the Chaim Sofer says that the reason is because when a person sits down for the Seder, they're supposed to re-experience Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Jewish people before Yitzias Mitzrayim were considered semi-non-Jews, and by Matan Torah they went through a conversion. They had Milah, they had Tefillah, they brought a carbon, they went through a conversion. So the Chaim Sofer says, when you sit down for the Seder, you can't make a bracha l'sapi Yitzias Mitzrayim because it's like a ger before the mikveh. When do we make a bracha? When we finish the Haggadah, before we drink the second cup, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher galanu v'galas haveseinu, kein yagienu l'moyadim v'noichel sham v'nazvachim v'napsachim, Baruch atah Hashem gal Yisro. He says, that's the bracha. After you went through the Haggadah, now you can make the bracha, like the ger after the mikveh. That's what the Chaim Sofer explains.
Also, you always have the one of this. Because you always say it. So
no, you're saying every day we have a mitzvah. Every day we have a mitzvah. Right, but the question is, because l'chayra Pesach, the mitzvah is different. The mitzvah is to tell the story at length to your child. Every day, right, every day it's a mitzvah. And we make a bracha on Torah. Every morning we make 3 brachas. Yeah.
I do not understand the logic of what Jacobson says.
He's saying before the Seder, it's like a Jew is before conversion, so to speak. Because every year it's Chayev Adam Liris Atz B'Kili Yotzim Mitzrayim. So therefore you make the bracha after the Haggadah. Afal B'Kei Noimeri. Nonetheless, the Ri says the Ein Liger B'Nashim Shemavarchas Acharat Tefillah. Many women, when they come out of the mikveh, they make a bracha after they come out of the mikveh, after the mikveh. According to the read, you should tell all the women to make a bracha before, because the only time you can't is by a ger. He says, no, there's no reason to get upset when they make a bracha after mikveh, when they finish nida. Why? The iket tfilas ger de loy motzi levarech loy chilku. Because what happened was, since there's a type of tefillah where you can't make a bracha before, so the Chazal already didn't divide, and therefore, even if they make a bracha after mikveh, even though they don't have to, a woman is not a ger, she can make a bracha before, but it's completely fine to make a bracha afterwards, because they're already not going to make a division. In other words, once they said by a ger, you have to make it after, so by every mikveh, you could do it after. The same is true by washing your hands. The same issue we have by netilas yadayim. When somebody comes out of the bathroom and does netilas yadayim, so he can't make a bracha before because his hands are tameh. So he has to wash his hands first to make a bracha. So once in this situation, you make al netilas yadayim after you wash your hands, so they already didn't make a division between washing your hands after the Beis HaKisei. And other times, let's say you're washing for bread, where essentially, if your hands are not tamei, you could make a bracha before, but you can always make the bracha after you wash your hands, because again, just like by tefillah, they're not making a division between this type of netilas yadayim. Since sometimes by netilas yadayim you can't make a bracha before. Why can't you make a bracha before? Because your hands are tamei, so you have to wash them first, and then you make the bracha on netilas yadayim. So already, every time you wash your hands, they said you can make the bracha after you wash the hands, even in a case where it's not muchruch, you don't have to because your hands are not tamei. After you go to the Beis HaKisei, you wash your hands, yeah. But here we're talking about a case where you make a bracha. So that would be, let's say, in the morning. Right in the morning, we make a bracha on the netilas yadayim, right? So even a person who knows that during the night his hands didn't touch any part that's impure, but he goes to the Beis HaKisei in the morning, so Tosfos says he can't make on the netilas yadayim before he washes his hands. Right? So you have to make after, so you have to wash your hands first. So already every netilas yadayim, even though you know your hands are not tamei, let's say you wash your hands for bread and you know your hands are not tamei. Nonetheless, you make on netilas yadayim, you could make it after you wash your hands, because again, they're not divided. Why didn't Rav's yeshiva exclude netilas yadayim also? Because it's the same svara like tvila. Just like tvila, you have to do it after. Netilas yadayim also you have to do after. It's not a pesach chiddush. Miyu b'netila yesh ta'am acher. But by washing their hands is another reason why you could make the bracha after. Levarich achar netila koidem niguv. In order that you should make a bracha after washing before you wipe your hands. Kedamrina, we learned, the Gemara says in Saita, ha'oicha lechem b'loy niguv yadayim kilu oicha lechem tameh. Somebody who eats bread without wiping their hands, it's like eating impure bread, meaning it's repulsive. It's like eating impure bread. The hands have to be dry. So therefore, drying the hands is part of netilas yadayim. So as long as you make the bracha before you dry your hands, it's still the middle of the process. It's still, you didn't finish the action, because you can only wash, you also have to dry. So therefore, by netilas yadayim, there's an extra component that doesn't even exist by tefillah, that you can do it after you wash your hands. V'yesh, there is also the minig by some, that's brought also in halacha, that they will rub their hands against each other after the bracha, so they're actually not even finished netila yet. Not only are you not drying it, you're still bringing the water and rubbing them together after the bracha, so you're not even finished netilas yadayim. But Taisa says even without that, just wiping the hands is part of netilas yadayim. V'yesh mefarshim, there are those who say the bechol tvilas kamrinon. That actually, when the Gemarah says here that by tefillah you have to make a bracha after, it's not only talking about a ger. It's talking about every type of mikveh. You have to make the bracha after. Why? The gavra loy chazi. Because the person can't make a bracha before. Why? For a completely different reason. The koidim sheyared lamayim ein tzarich levarich. Before you go down to the water, you don't have to make a bracha. Why? Because we're afraid dilma misham biasusa demaya. Because of fear from going into the water. Mimna v'loy tavel. He may stop himself and not go into the mikveh. Once he goes into the water, azu arim, he's naked. He shouldn't make a bracha because his heart and private places are on the same level. It's not covered. So therefore he makes after tefillah. So here we have a completely different interpretation.
If the water was murky, though, you wouldn't have a good seat, so right? You wouldn't be able to see.
Right, if that's the case. So here we have a whole completely different reason. You have to remember that mikvahs then were not clean and warm, and very often they were absolutely freezing and dirty and disgusting, and therefore it's a natural consideration that a person is going to chicken out and say, I'm not doing this. So if he makes a bracha, maybe a bracha levatola. So therefore by every type of mikvah they said, wait till you come up and then you'll make the bracha. Nothing to do with conversion, nothing to do with Balkari, a completely different interpretation, which would mean that it exists by every single type of mikveh. It's not that you say it exists by Gerim and therefore you do it by others also, it exists by Balkari, you do it by others. But rather, L'chatchila was created by all tefillahs because of this chashash, that the person may stop himself from coming into the water.
Broke happened about 5 minutes after?
He went in, nobody hung out in the mikveh. He came up, he covered, and he made a bracha. Allah tefillah. Yeah.
And was he a contemporary of?
We learned, you remember Daf Gimel Amid Beis, you remember? With the carbon Pesach?
Yeah.
You remember that story?
Okay. I don't remember.
The person who bragged that he's eating the carbon Pesach, and he said you have to ask them for the tail.
Oh,
He tricked me.
so this is during the period of virus.
Yeah. Well, we spoke then, it's a question when Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira lived. Were the two Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiras or one, it's not so clear. Because there was a later one, yeah. So some say, the Maratzchi says that story happened after Bayis Sheni, actually. But they still continue to do the Carbon Pesach, and they were afraid that he's this espionage here. That was one very logical interpretation of the Gemarah. So it actually would have been after the Churban, yeah. Today women make a bracha, after mikveh, after the mikveh. No. The women make a bracha after mikveh, yeah.
What's the very last part of that? Tosfos about Achar Sheyorev. What's that?
After you go down, if the water is open and clear, right? So when you're under the water, you don't make a bracha because the heart and the erva see each other, so to speak. So he has to wait till he comes up. So it's not 5 minutes; it could be a few seconds. He just says Achar Sheyorev du Arum. So therefore, he does it after.
After he gets dressed?
No. If he comes out of the water and the heart is above the water and the erva, the private place, are under the water, then it's fine. That's fine. So he doesn't have to wait till he gets dressed. Okay. So therefore, in conclusion, by tefillah you make the bracha after. By shofar you make the bracha. Before. I saw a beautiful vart that's brought from the Chidushei Harim, the first Gerer Rebbe. It's brought in Sifsei Tzaddik. And he says a beautiful insight. Sort of the back of the Mesifta Gemaras, they bring different ideas from Svarim. The Sifsei Tzaddik Parshas Kisavai says this, that I mentioned, it says in Parshas Kisavai, that when a person did Vidui Meiser, they confessed that they already did all their tithings. So what did they say then? In their confession, their Vidui Meiser, the person said that, what's the language? The language is a chumash here. Anybody has a chumash? Dvarim, Parshas Kisava. The blue chumash am I here? No chumash? Oh, thank you. Lo yavarti mitzvaysecha. Thank you very much. So a person, the 4th year, had to make a declaration that he did all his tithing. So the expression is, you have to tell Hashem, B'yarti HaKadosh min Abayis, I removed all the holy food from my house. I gave it to the Levi, the Ger, Yasam, and Almana. Lo yavarti b'mitzvaysecha v'lo shachachti. I was not over on any of your mitzvahs. V'lo shachachti, I did not forget. What didn't I forget? He's saying, I did it, so obviously I didn't forget. So Rashi says, "V'lo shechachti milivarechecha al afrashas maestros." I did not forget to thank you, to make a bracha. The question is, the bracha on all the mitzvahs is a rabbinic obligation. How does Rashi interpret it in the words, "V'lo shechachti"? I did not forget milivarechecha. Very strange. He's explaining the psukim in Chumash. I was not over on your mitzvah, and I did not forget. He says, what does it mean I didn't forget? I did not forget milavarechecha, to thank you. How could you explain that's what the words v'lo shechachti when it's a rabbinic obligation that came only later? It's very difficult to understand. You understand the question?
Well, it was before Rashi. It was before Rashi.
Yeah, the pasuk says, "Lo yavarti mitzvaysecha v'lo shachachti." I did not transgress your mitzvah, right? I gave all the maestros, and I did not forget. What didn't I forget? The mitzvah? Obviously, if you did it, you didn't forget, right? So what does v'lo shachachti add? You want to say you did it. You're saying, I did the mitzvah, I did everything perfect, I did it right, and now bless us. Of course you didn't forget. So it actually says it means you didn't forget to make a bracha. How can you interpret the words v'lo shachachti, didn't forget to make a bracha, when these are the words in Chumash, and a bracha was added many, many years later when the Chachamim added a bracha, because it's only a rabbinic obligation to make a bracha before mitzvahs. But the pasuk v'lo shachachti is not before Rashi. Pasuk v'lo shachachti is not from Rashi. The pasuk v'lo shachachti is in Chumash. I didn't forget. Rashi is saying what it means, I didn't forget. So the Chidush Harim says, it's an interesting thing here. Who is the one who says you have to make a bracha before you do a mitzvah? Rabbi Yehuda says it in the name of Shmuel. And the expression is, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kol ha-mitzvahs b'varech alein oiver la'asiyasam. All the mitzvahs you have to make a bracha, oiver la'asiyasam. So the Gemara wants to know, what does the word oiver mean? And the Gemara brings three sources from Tanakh. He said, it's another strange thing. You have here an Amoira, Shmuel. He uses a word, and then the Gemara wants to analyze what he meant, and you go back to the Tanakh to figure out what he meant. It's a very strange phenomenon. Usually, if you're trying to figure out a word of Tanakh, you explain it through another Tanakh. You explain one pasuk through another pasuk. Here in Amoira, who's living how long after the Tanakh? He's living, the Tanakh was written, V'huava lefneim is from Parshas Bereshis. You're dealing with Shmuel. Shmuel lived after Churban Bayesheni. So from the Jewish people went into Eretz Yisrael, 400 years till Bayis Rishon, and then another 400 years, it's 800 years, 1500 years, almost 2,000 years. He used the word oiver. Use a different word. No, he used some obscure word. Then we say, how do we figure out what he meant? Let's go back to the Tanakh to figure out what Shmuel meant. He says, this is a very strange phenomenon, to analyze an Amoira's words through the word of Tanakh, living thousands of years later. So the Chidush Harim has a lovely explanation here. And he says, why did the Chazal make a bracha before mitzvahs? What's wrong to do a mitzvah without a bracha? You put on tefillin without a bracha, like they did it in the olden days. You eat matzah without a bracha. There were no brachas. We make a bracha. On everything we make, not on everything, but on all of it, you make b'dikas chametz, you make a bracha. Light Chanukah candles, a bracha. Put on a talis, you make a bracha. Put on a mezuzah, you make a bracha. Minat Torah, this didn't exist. You put a mezuzah without a bracha. You did all the mitzvahs without a blessing. Why did the Chazal feel the need to add this? What was it? Why'd they do it? So he says the reason is because, essentially, a Jew who appreciates what a mitzvah is has a tremendous enthusiasm and sense of simcha before he does the mitzvah. It's such an exciting opportunity that naturally the Jew bursts out in thanks and joy and dance and ecstasy from the privilege of knowing what he or she has now an opportunity to do. So when Rashi says, Lo shachachti, I didn't forget to bless you, he's not referring to the bracha that the rabbis instituted. He's referring to the fact that they always had a bracha, without a text, without words. It was just a sense of wow. I can't believe that I have this opportunity. A tremendous sense of simcha. Person has an opportunity to do something like a mitzvah, it evoked tremendous joy. And what was the reason it evoked tremendous joy? Because this was literally an opportunity that Hashem gave the person to connect to Him. And to connect to Him in the most real and absolute and infinite way, an eternal way. So they couldn't believe their good luck. That's the Lo Shachachti. So this was an essential experience that came naturally. You didn't have to say it. As generations progressed, and sometimes spiritual senses get dulled, so the Chazal institutionalized it. That a person should understand what he's about to do. Don't just go ahead and do it. You're thanking Hashem before the mitzvah. It puts the person into the mode, a mindful consciousness, to be able to appreciate what they're doing. Yes, you say today the bracha also needs a bracha. You have to make a bracha before the bracha, so you should know what you're doing. Yeah, the problem is ein l'davar soif.
The lesson of Rashi states
Lo shachachti milavarechecha. So he teaches milavarechecha is to thank you, to thank you. He says that's why he uses the word oiver. Not he could have used another word. He used the word oiver because of these psukim. These psukim are not just to prove what he meant. It's to prove the concept. He says, what happens in these psukim? Avshalom was killed. Somebody went to tell David. He thought David is going to celebrate it because Avshalom was his enemy. Achimatz rushed before him because he wanted to be the first one to tell David. In other words, it was about enthusiasm. That's what his point is. Oiver means you're running ahead of it. Before the mitzvah, yeah, you're so excited. That's the mitzvah. That's why he uses the word oiver. The word oiver and the psukim bring out that there's an excitement, there's a passion. I'm running ahead of you. Why am I running ahead of you? Because I want to get there first. Why do I want to get there first? Because there's something very positive about it, very exciting. Yaakov Avinu wanted to appease Esav swiftly. Mashiach wants to lead the Jewish people to the Geula. Achimatz wanted to go tell David what happened. In all these cases, it represents a tremendous excitement, a tremendous passion that he wants to go ahead and do it. That's why I use the word oiver with all these psukim in order to convey this idea that before the mitzvah, he wants to, so to speak, pass ahead of the mitzvah because there's a tremendous excitement that the mitzvah represents for the Jew. So therefore, he uses the word oiver, and that's why Rashi says, Lo shachachtem levarechecha. That's what he brings. And then he adds a very interesting insight. He says that one of the main reasons for the weakness that people have in Avodah is that the Yetzer Hara puts in false humility into people's hearts. And the false humility tells them that they're unworthy to serve God. Who am I? I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. I'm worthless. God is not interested in me. There's nothing I can do to serve Him. You just give up on yourself. And he says that's the greatest lie. The greatest lie is that a person thinks that his mitzvah doesn't mean anything. His avodas Hashem is valueless. It's worthless. So the bracha is trying to change that. The bracha is trying to reverse that the person should realize the specialness of it for him and for Hashem also. It's meaningful. It's something. God actually wants me to do this. He actually wants me to do this. This big, infinite God wants me to do this mitzvah for Him. So that creates a simcha also of the dignity of the person that Hashem wants this mitzvah from.
Example in Tanya.
Memalef, v'hinei Hashem nitzav alav, v'maloi chal aretz koydei, ma'abet alav v'chen kloyes v'leiv, imayv de'karai. So what's the summation of it all? In the summation, we had a machloikas between Rav Papi and Rav Papa, whether to make the bracha levayir chametz, or to make the bracha al bir chametz. Rav Papi said levayir, and Rav Papi said levayir, and Rav Papa said al bir. And the Gemarah said that v'hilchas ad halacha is al bir chametz, al bir. How do we understand now al bir chametz? How do we understand the significance of al bir chametz? Why do we say al bir? Why is the halacha to say al bir, not levayir? What's the reason? So, the Tosfos v'hilchos al bir chametz gave two interpretations. One is you could say al bir chametz, meaning there's no advantage in it. It's maybe better to say levayir, but you could say al bir. Or the second interpretation is no, you should say al bir. The first interpretation is basically saying levayir is certainly good. You thank Hashem, He's given us a mitzvah, levayir chametz, to dispose of the chametz. You could say al bir chametz. Thank you for the opportunity to destroy. Thank you for the opportunity of destroying the chametz or regarding the destruction of chametz. Even though Rav Papi said that sounds like it happened already, and it didn't happen. But Rav Papa said it sounds like the future more than the past. So therefore you could say al bir also. You don't have to say levayir. You could say al bir even though you didn't do it. You could say levayir, but you could say al bir. The second pshat in Tosfos was no, dafka al bir. You have to say dafka al bir, not levayir. And on this Tosfos said v'yesh tam bebrachas. If this is the case, you have to say al bir. That means there's some reason by brachas to say al bir, not levayir, which seems strange. And he says v'ri loy matza tam l'chol habrachas. The Ri did not find a reason for this. To understand why some brachas do we say le, and some brachas we say al. What's the logic? According to the first interpretation in Tosfos, it's not a question. You're right, there's no reason. You could say le. If you want, you could say al. That's the point. You could say levai, you could say al. The same is true with all the other mitzvahs. You could say le, you could say al. The second interpretation is v'hilchos al bir chametz means you have to say al, not le. If you have to say al, not le, the question is why? What's the advantage of al over le? There has to be some reason. And he says the Ri couldn't find a reason why some brachas this way, some brachas that way. So it's completely two different interpretations in the Gemarah. V'hilchos al bir chametz means v'hilchos also al bir chametz. Certainly levayir works. Or v'hilchos al bir chametz, only bir chametz, and levayir doesn't work. And according to the second interpretation, which means you have to say al bir chametz, he says he doesn't know the reason. Why dafka al bir? What's the advantage? And this became a fascinating sugya here in the Gemarah, among most of the Rishonim, to try to figure out what was the system of the Chazal when they formulated the brachas. When did they put a lamed, and when did they put an al? Can it be figured out? Can it be figured out? The first view is the view of the Rambam. The view of the Rambam we already addressed in Hilchos Brachas Perek Yud Aleph. You have the copies. And the Rambam formulates a system which is all based on this Gemarah. And the Rambam's formulation is a fascinating formulation. And the way it works according to the Rambam is he analyzes, based on when we learn the Rambam and we look at the Gemarah, it seems like he analyzed the Gemarah, and from this he made a formulation. What was the formulation? There are three conditions that are needed to say le. If any of these conditions are missing, you got to go to al. What are the three conditions required to be able to say le? Condition number one is you have to be obligated. It's not voluntary, you have to be obligated. Condition number two, you have to be doing it in order to fulfill your own obligation, not as a favor or a messenger for somebody else to fulfill his obligation. Condition number three, you have to do it before the act, not after the act. Let's give an illustration for each one. If I'm shechting an animal, am I obligated? There's no obligation. You don't have to eat chicken. You don't have to eat meat. You could be a vegan. You could be a vegetarian. If you want to eat chicken, you got to shecht it, but you don't have to. So then the Rambam would say, no le, al. And we understand why. Think of the words. God commanded me to slaughter. He never commanded me to slaughter. Didn't tell me, go slaughter. I don't have to slaughter. You could not slaughter your whole life and you didn't do any sin. There's no mitzvah to slaughter. If you want to eat chicken, there's a mitzvah how to eat chicken. So al hashchita. He commanded us regarding shchita. He gave us a mitzvah regarding shchita. Relating to shchita. That's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael, which includes me. But it's not a specific commandment to go shecht. It's not something that's a commandment. So that goes into al. Rule number 1. Rule number 2. It may be a commandment, but I'm not doing it for myself. I'm representing somebody else. Example, a moil. If the father is alive, he has the mitzvah to circumcise his child, not anybody else. Father can't say, it's not my issue, you take care of it. The moil works for the father. He's hired by the father. He's a shliach of the father, like we do today in most cases. That moil, the Rambam says, can't make the mitzvah, lamul. He doesn't have a mitzvah to circumcise his child. Al hamila, regarding circumcision. Because it's the father's obligation. Rule number 2. Rule number 3. Even if you're doing it and you're obligated and you're doing it for yourself, not for somebody else, you can only say li if it's before the mitzvah. Once you did the mitzvah, you can't say li anymore, because li sounds like I'm about to do it. God commanded me to go ahead and do it. Now you have to say al. It's like you're thanking Hashem for doing it. The example, you pick up a lulav. You pick up a lulav, once you picked it up, you already did the mitzvah. So what's the bracha? Al netilas lulav. Thank you Hashem for shaking the lulav. For the mitzvah of shaking the lulav. Not for the mitzvah to go shake the lulav, to shake the lulav, which sounds like I'm about to do it. For the mitzvah of shaking the lulav, which sounds like already, can also sound like I did it already. It was done. L'shmaya kol shofar, you're going to blow shofar. You're about to blow shofar, so you say lamed.
You're about to hear it?
You're about to hear it, yeah. Yeah, you didn't hear it yet.
Why do we do those?
Why should it be al? Right. Right. You didn't understand. Li is before the action. Al is after the action.
So how do the two first elements for Lishmoa Shofar, that the Balkore is obligated in...
Thank you for the mitzvah to hear Kol Shofar, which is going to be now.
The first two elements, he's required, and he's doing it to fulfill his own obligation, even though everyone else is Yotzi. The first two requirements...
3 conditions to say Li. Condition number 1, it has to be an obligation, not voluntary. Right. Like Shchita. Right?
And shofar is an obligation.
Shofar is an obligation. Condition number 2, it has to be an obligation, but I am fulfilling my own obligation, not yours.
Right, and he is his own obligation.
Right? Condition number 3, it has to be done before the mitzvah. And he is. So when I put on tefillin, I say, Lehaniach tefillin. Why? It has all 3 requirements. Am I obligated to put on tefillin? It's not voluntary, I'm obligated. Am I doing it for myself or I'm doing it for you? I can't put on tefillin for you, sorry.
In my case, he's Monsey, everyone else.
That's true.
So he can fulfill his own...
Yeah. When I say, good point, when I say Lishma Kol Shofar, I'm also being mitzi others, but I'm also being mitzi myself. Not tefillin. You have to put on your own tefillin. Right? You can't be mitzi somebody else with tefillin. I can't tell you, do me a favor, put on tefillin for me today. I'll watch you. Some people do it. They sit in shul and watch other people put on tefillin. It doesn't work.
You could be Monsey, someone, the bracha to tefillin. You could say, I'll make the bracha for you and you put it on.
If he doesn't know.
People
If he doesn't know.
brachas on tefillin. The next one is
So you want to know why by tefillin you make al mitzvahs tefillin? It should be what? Again, laniach tefillin?
So, you say the bracha after you
Huh?
You say the bracha after you
It's interesting. By tefillin you change to al. But we understand why, according to them, you say lahaniach. These are the three conditions the Rambam postulates, and he gets all three from our Gemarah.
Why do we do this?
Like we're a puppy.
Yeah.
Each
Why do we do the
each
shit by the
mitzvah of
Ezra?
tefillin is separate. That's the psalm someone cannot do.
You want to know why al mitzvahs? Okay. So this we're going to explore, Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow, to understand the shit of the Rambam, and see all the brachas, how they come into it. And then we'll see the shita of Rabbeinu Tamu as a second shita, and then the shita of the Ranu as a third shita. A huge argument of the Rishonim when you say li, and when you say al, and everybody had to fit their shita into all the blessings to make it work. That is going to be our theme tomorrow, Be'ezer Hashem. B'li neder, have a wonderful day.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.